Hello there.
This is Crispin Glover calling.
Hi, Crispin. How are you, sir?
Great, how are you doing?
Been waiting for your call, and you're in Chicago. It's great to have you in the Windy City.
Glad to be here, thank you.
Now, you come to the Music Box Theater. You're going to be there on Southport this weekend showing one of your films. You've been there before, last year, as a matter of fact.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, I'm showing two films. At 8 o'clock, I'll be performing a live dramatic narration of 8 different books. And then I'll be presenting part 2 of what will be a trilogy. Part 2 is called It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. Then I'll have a question and answer period after that, and then a book signing of books that I've presented in the live dramatic narration. And then at midnight, there'll be part 1 of the film as well. And that's on Friday and Saturday. Sunday, there's no midnight show.
Yeah, what is it, right?
That's right, yeah, part 1.
Now, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. I think the first time I saw you, a lot of people saw you in Back to the Future.
Yeah.
You know, and I had recognized you from some other films, but you really grabbed me as a lifelong fan when you were in River's Edge.
Yeah, I'm proud of that movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie and a great vehicle for you. You're kind of like one of those actors that you've been in so many movies, but you get so wrapped up in the character that we almost, you don't always stand out as you. You stand out as the character, Andy Warhol in The Doors, the Charlie's Angels, kind of like Gary Oldman. You so become the character. What kind of approach do you take when you totally become the character?
Well, I do understand the benefit to working in that manner to a certain extent. There are distractions if one. I find that if I am to be acting as the character at all times, unless it was something that's supported by the entire cast and crew, I would find that there was a distraction, and to me, the most important thing is concentration and getting into what the what it is that the character wants and needs, and going after that 100%. So I could almost find it a distraction if I felt like there was somebody that I was responding to in a way that I personally wouldn't be responding to. So I kind of avoid that, although I think it is a good technique if it's supported by the entire production.
Right.
But if you're kind of doing it on your own, then it becomes almost like a kind of a showboating thing that I would feel uncomfortable with doing it. Although I know there are actors that do it, and I respect it when it's done, and I really do actually favor it as being the best way of working. But for me personally, unless it's an entirely supported thing where everybody knows what's going on and everybody's supportive of that, it would be a bit too distracting.
Yeah, too much. We're talking with Crispin Glover. Great to have you on the program. You became this actor. People knew you, and people loved you from your Hollywood work, but you kind of found your audience, your people. Okay, those of us who follow your. It's like Hollywood acting is your day job, and that's not an insult at all, because Volcanic Eruptions, where you produce your own works that are kind of from your own world. Is that an okay assumption?
Yeah, I publish books through Volcanic Eruptions, and I've funded 2 of my own films. Actually, strictly, it's not done through Volcanic Eruptions with my films, but that doesn't matter. I use it as the figurehead for it.
Right, and you kind of do independent work. It's the classic. You do films and you enjoy acting, but you also have your own visions that you pour 100% into.
Yes, exactly. And not only do I fund my own films, but of course I'm touring with them. I'm self-distributing them in this fashion, and that's something that isn't really done as much. There has been a little bit of John Cassavetes is a good example of an actor that acted in films and funded his own unique directorial writing elements. But there was a sort of corporate funding situation at that time, or rather a corporate distribution situation that supported that sort of more esoteric fare, which really isn't the case now. And this is why I tour with my own films.
Your film, what is it? and the new one, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine. These films are kind of timeless, coming from the 60s, the free-form film. Maybe I'm going to throw out some names, Jodorowsky, perhaps Kenneth Anger. Were those any influences on you?
There were 4 filmmakers that I was thinking about very specifically while I was working on What Is It. Everything Is Fine is based on on one of the actors that's in my first film. It's a script that he had written. So that film really doesn't have influences from other directors as much as from that actors or writers. He was a man who had a severe case of cerebral palsy, and he had written a very fascinating screenplay that's a fantastical genre piece wherein he's the bad guy. In the first film, What Is It?, wherein most of the actors have Down syndrome, but they're not playing characters that necessarily have Down syndrome. That film, well, really, it's my psychological reaction to the kind of corporate excision of anything that can make an audience member uncomfortable in any way whatsoever in the last 30 years or so. And I think it really is a very bad thing when anything that can possibly make an audience uncomfortable is necessarily excised, or the film will not be funded or distributed, because it's that moment when an audience member sits back in their chair, looks up at the screen, thinks to themselves, is this right what I'm watching? Is it wrong what I'm watching? Should I be here? Should the director have done this? What is it? Which is the title of the film. And it's asking, what is it that's taboo in the culture? What does it mean that the taboo is ubiquitously been excised?
Right.
And I think it's a negative thing. It's important because these moments when audiences are asking those kinds of questions, it means they're actually having an educational experience.
Right. Exactly.
And to cut that out ubiquitously of for the most important form of communication in the culture is a negative form of education. It's anti-education, and it ends up stupefying the culture because questions equal education.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty of stupefying the culture. There's no doubt about that. So it's good to see at least one person going against that grain.
Well, I have a question and answer period after every film is shown, and that usually lasts between 40 and 40 minutes an hour. And I've had all kinds of questions, and I sometimes people have very aggressive questioning because it does go into territory that is not normally gone into. Now, the Stephen C. Stewart film is quite a different subject, and I had put him into part one of what will be the trilogy. I had read his screenplay a long time before it, and when I expanded part one, what was originally going to be a short film, into a feature film, it was originally just to promote the concept of working with a majority of the characters being played by actors with Down syndrome, when they were not necessarily characters that had Down syndrome, which in of itself was a taboo concept. And when I had some trouble getting corporate funding from it, I thought this would be a good way to promote that concept. I realized as I turned it into a feature that the corporate entities that I had met with that voiced concerns about funding a film like that weren't voicing concerns about the viability as much as that they were voicing concerns about that of itself actually being a taboo concept. And I realized simultaneously that really any taboo subject was something that was not going to be corporately funded or distributed, and I felt that was an important element to address. And so I put myself into the film as a personification of the antagonism, and I realized that Stephen C. Stewart had written a screenplay that I'd read many years before that had certain reactions to a whole different set of circumstances, which was his life, but there was something in common having to do with the reaction to things, and that there had a taboo element to it. But his film has a much more cathartic emotional element with his story. Like I said, he'd been locked in a nursing home for about 10 years when his mother died. He was derisively called an MR, a mental retard, by the people that were taking care of him at the nursing home, and that's not a nice thing to say to anybody, but Steve, of course, was of normal intelligence, and this was a very difficult time, these 10 years that he could not get out. He eventually did get out, and when he did, he wrote the screenplay, which is written in a genre-style murder mystery kind of almost psychological terror, but
Right.
more like a television movie that was written in the 70s. And there's a naivete to it, but there's something beautifully revealed
Good evening,
about
everyone.
his
It's 5.
Right.
own inner psyche because of it.
Crispin, how do you connect with these people? How did you meet Stephen, or how do you assemble a cast for a film of actors with Down syndrome? How do you find this many people?
Well, they're two different stories. I had met Stephen C. Stewart in 1986, so that was a long time ago, and that came through a series of filmmakers that I'd worked with that were in Salt Lake, and I met Steve through those people. The film that I wrote later on that didn't have to do with the Stephen C. Stewart film initially. It was a very long and involved process to find people and guardians that of people with Down syndrome that felt that this was an artistic process that would be good for the people that they were in charge of.
A lot of people have to be guarded, especially if they don't know you or your artistic integrity,
Yeah, that's right, and there were always violent elements and elements that caused a certain amount of question within that community. And most of the guardians that I met with were very concerned and did not want the people that they were in charge of to be involved. But the ones that knew that it was important to have our artistic element for the people that they were in charge of, that this would be a therapeutic and beneficial thing to them, they knew it immediately, and those are the people that I worked with, the people they were in charge of.
It just seems like we're talking to Crispin Glover, great actor and director and all-around artist. You lead an interesting life. I'm seeing every day is filled with wonderful connections to people who enjoy your work and being creative. And maybe I'm just assuming, but it's got to be wonderful.
Well, it's a very good thing to be doing stuff that I want to be doing. There's no question about it. In the way that I'm doing it, as I tour around with the film, I do like meeting people. I do like performing the show. And yet, of course, at the same time, it's a huge amount of work. And it traveling that much and being away from a single home, that kind of thing can be genuinely difficult. But I'm very dedicated to it, and I'm glad to be able to be doing these things that I want to be doing. And in fact, if there's not a lot of production this year from any kind of strike, it actually is helpful for me in terms of being able to have time to continue to tour with the film, because I organically have a tour whenever it is that I'm not working, and I have to know a number of months in advance that no work is going to be coming up. So it's very important.
Crispin, it's got to be really something for you to have fans from so many different areas of your career. You've got people who have been with you with the books, Oakmont and Rat Catching, people who remember you from those strange films, the David Lynch stuff, or the River's Edge. There's people who remember you from TV, and so you have like different groups of fans. You've got a bunch of young girls who love you from Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, that's something I count on. And one thing I've forgotten to mention that's important is CrispinGlover.com is where people can find out where I'm going to be touring with my films, because it's not just here in Chicago. I'll be the week after in Los Angeles at the Egyptian, after that at the Castor in San Francisco, and then next year in Seattle and Portland and Minneapolis, and I'll be touring on beyond that. So people should look at CrispinGlover.com, but I count on the fact that there are people that know me from these various elements throughout the years to be able to go and tour around with the films such as I am.
Some of your Hollywood roles, what are some of your favorites? I mean, George McFly has to have a spot in your heart. Lionel from Where the Heart Is. Let's talk about some of your favorite.
Really, in terms of films as a whole, and not so much about characters, films as a whole that I like that work. There really are very few. I like a film I did called The Orkley Kid I did at the AFI that was never really officially released. It's only a 30-minute film. I think that's a very good film. I think River's Edge is a very good film, and I'm in What Is It, and I like that movie. And actually, strangely, I really Beowulf just came out, and I actually think that's a good movie.
Yeah, you played Grendel.
Yeah, I play Grendel. So that's not a lot of movies. It's not to say that there aren't other directors. I worked with Milos Forman. He's a great director. I worked with David Lynch. I've worked with all kinds of interesting people. Played interesting characters. I like the character of Willard that I played. I like the part of Thin Man that I played in the Charlie's Angels films. But it's like, in terms of the film as a whole, cohesively, or is it a director that I worked with, or is there a character that I played? They're kind of different levels, and ultimately, my favorite thing is making my own films and touring with them as I am right now. And people can see this very unique evening of entertainment. You'll get to enjoy the question and answer session with Crispin at the Music Box Theater tomorrow. And the live. Also, it's important to note, though, that I do a 1-hour live dramatic narration of 8 different books. Awesome. Before each show, starting at 8 o'clock, and then I present the film, which is 72 minutes, and then I have a question and answer period, and then a book signing after that. So it's a long and enjoyable evening. You'll get your Crispin Glover fix at in the Music Box. What a beautiful, wonderful place to see a film. Yeah, I love that venue. It's great. People got to pick up your books. We can get into this. You got a minute? We'll talk about your very unique style of writing books, if you want to talk about that. Yeah. Well, I started making them a long time ago when I was 18, and what I do is I generally take old bindings from the 1800s and rework them. Sometimes I use some of the text from the original book, but the text is greatly altered, and then I heavily illustrate them, sometimes with existing illustrations that have been reworked or original illustrations, and the books become their own thing. This is why it's become a slideshow, because I started publishing them in the 80s, and when I was doing that, people said, "Oh, well, you have to have a book reading." But the book readings really did not make sense unless I had illustrations with them. So I knew I couldn't do a book reading unless I had slides. So it took a while, but I finally did make a slideshow of it, and it's become a 1-hour presentation, and it's something I've done actually for a long time. But it's, hearkening back to vaudeville, where people toured with an act for many years, which is a separate thing from my acting career, but it's something that it is really an acting performance. It's really kind of a one-man dramatic show that lasts about an hour. Yeah, this is what you do. You show your films, you read some from your books. Your CD will be available as well? Yes, yeah. But again, I have to clarify that it isn't just reading from books. It really is a dramatic presentation. Awesome. Where it's there's slides behind me, and I enact things. And actually, people can see a little bit of what it's like. There's a clip from something I did a long time ago on the Dennis Miller Show on CrispinGlover.com. Okay. So it can kind of give a small preview of that. Very unique. How did you come up with this presentation? Well, like I said, there were people that said I should do book readings, and it took a while. I knew that I needed to have the slides with them. Somebody at one point in the very early 90s, 1992, did a kind of retrospect of films that I'd done at the time at a film festival, and they wanted me to come up, and I thought that would be a good time to present the slideshow. So I did that for the first time there. Excellent stuff. Well, thanks for what you do, man. You've been very inspirational. Who are some of as an artist, as an overall artist, who are some of your great influences? Well, you started to ask about filmmakers, and I didn't finish that question. Was when I was working on What Is It, specifically, there were 4 filmmakers that I was thinking about being Rainer Werner Fassbinder, Werner Herzog, Luis Buñuel, Stanley Kubrick. Those are 4 that I was specifically thinking about while I was making the film. That isn't to say there aren't other directors that have influenced me for the years. I've very much liked Fellini. I like David Lynch. I like Murnau. I like Todd Browning. But there's a huge list. In terms of artists, outside of the filmmaking world, I've always admired Diane Arbus's photography. I love Beethoven, Bach, Dostoevsky.
The list goes on. Yeah,
those are some of my favorites.
And I'm going to see you. I'm going to come up to you Sunday and shake your hand if you don't mind.
Oh, please, yeah, say hello. I would like to meet you in person.
Crispin Glover with us. Hold on 1 second, okay?
Yeah, definitely.
There he is, Crispin Glover at the Music Box. Go to crispinglover.com to find out more about this very, very interesting and cool artist.